So let's begin with a story over the weekend that we reported. It was only on NEA Report that you're going to see this kind of journalism, and the story was about the resignation, the abrupt resignation that took place now, what was 1 week ago to today. That was of the City Parks and Recreation Director, Wixon Hufstetler, who announced in a press release that he was leaving the city. And the press release was sent out unusually late in the day, 4:43 p.m. In the day, which really limited news outlets' ability to find out more about that in the same day. Since that happened, four independent sources, as were first reported in the story we published Saturday, told NEA Report the City Parks and Recreation Director abruptly resigned due to unwanted advances toward women some in the workplace, which led to him being given the choice to resign or be fired on Sunday. Hufstetler denied this as completely false Thursday afternoon to NEA Report. In addition to that, however, two other inappropriate incidences were also detailed to us by several more willing to speak on the condition of anonymity for fear of reprisal from the city. Since then, it's been more than two, since the initial report. We're only going to tell you about the ones we have published so far. And what we will do going forward as we can, we will report more, but we have a process here, and we give our sources confidentiality completely and anonymity. But I am trying to convince one source specifically, and she knows who she is, of how much it could truly assist others if she were willing to come forward and to speak publicly with her name attached. But nonetheless, anybody that wants to contact NEA Report can do so, and you'll have total confidentiality. Monday, late afternoon, 1 week ago today, actually later in the day than now, it was 4:42 p.m., I should correctly mention, that the City Parks and Recreation Director would be resigning his post effective immediately. The resignation quote is on the screen right there. Quote, "I'm resigning my position to explore other opportunities," Hufstetler said. "I've enjoyed the last 8 years building the Parks Department to what it is today." But that's not the reason that he left, numerous sources said. And I should also begin this by pointing out he wasn't leaving for another job. He was leaving for, quote, other opportunities and to explore them. But generally speaking, one would not leave such a very well-paid position. I've been told it's in the 70,000 range, but I'm still working to find those numbers out from the city, who is off work today and who you'll see in a moment has not been very forthcoming with any information thus far. That bit of information they may release, but there was no alternative, no other job in place, and the resignation came as just as abrupt as that. But we were told, as of the publication on Saturday, four independent sources told us, and they all worked within local government, different levels. They told us an identical story. Hufstetler was caught making unwanted advances through his cell phone, not a city phone, I don't believe, from what we've been told. However, it would still be requestable through Freedom of Information Act if this was conducting city business on that device. He was making unwanted advances through his cell phone to a female and was told to resign or be fired in a Sunday meeting with the city's COO and the HR director. All sources that we spoke to were told sexting. We kept hearing about a picture. That's all we can say right now, because we haven't spoken to the alleged victim of that. We don't know who she is. We would like to, and she would be kept completely confidential if she chooses to speak with us, just as all of our sources always will, no matter how much the city asks. And yes, they've asked already. They will not find out who did this. They can take me to court and they won't. The Supreme Court has said journalists don't have to reveal their sources. And these people work for us, by the way. Just want to point that out. We don't work for them. We're not in their city. They work for us. And that's not just a tagline. When asked Thursday afternoon about those allegations, the real reason we were told, City Communications Director Bill Campbell said he had no knowledge of that. Campbell said he only knew Hufstetler had met with Human Resources Director Dwayne Douglas and Jonesboro Chief Operations Officer Ed Tanner Sunday night before tendering his resignation. He referred questions to those two and specifically mentioned that they were the only two in the meeting, so that we needed to talk to them. So we did. We reached out to HR Director Dwayne Douglas. Although this was the first confirmation of part of our story that we had been told by all these different people, this was the first on the record confirmation that there had been a Sunday night meeting. There had been a meeting between these three, and the resignation came out of that. That's what we were told, and it was confirmed. The meeting took place. The resignation came out of that, and that was confirmed. So we wanted to know, was he given a choice to be fired or resign? And we called HR Director Dwayne Douglas. He said first that he couldn't talk to us and hung up on us. We called him back and point blank asked him immediately, are you covering up for employees who are sexting others? He said, quote, I already told you all communications have to go through Bill Campbell. Wixon resigned, he said, because he was interrupting me, for personal reasons and wanted some privacy, and we're going to honor that request. Although he doesn't get that choice, by the way, to honor the request if somebody requests privacy. There's these things called laws that public employees and all people, for that matter, have to follow, but especially public employees that are dealing with taxpayers' money in their job. Every time he cashes a check, his work check, it's money you and I paid in. He hung up on us again shortly after that, Dwayne Douglas. So we contacted Bill Campbell, who said Douglas would be calling us back, and he did a short time later. He then said, quote, Bill Campbell, said he failed to let me know it was okay to communicate with the media. Douglas said that. It should always be okay for any city employee to communicate with the media, by the way. That should be internal policy of any open and transparent government. Quote, he went on to say, quote, excuse me, quote now, I can tell you that basically Ed Tanner and myself met with Wixon on Sunday. Wixon submitted his resignation for personal reasons. He asked for some privacy, and we're going to honor that request. He would not confirm or deny if he and the city COO gave then Parks Director Huffstetler the ultimatum to resign or be fired. And that's an important detail in FOIA law, because if they gave him an ultimatum, then it's what's called a forced resignation. A forced resignation means somebody's personnel records are still retrievable through Freedom of Information Act requests. They seem to not have known that, as that's an Attorney General opinion from 2013. But it specifically states it. And I've sent that along to city employees, along with City Attorney Carol Duncan, who, by the way, is elected and not appointed. You will vote for her or not if she runs again. She denied a Freedom of Information Act request for an EA report because she said she had no legal alternative. She cited the part protecting government employees from personnel records request if they resign rather than be fired. But we sent her along. The quote from Attorney General Dustin McDaniel, quote, this office has opined that a coerced resignation can in principle amount to constructive termination that would satisfy the level of discipline element. Attorney General Dustin McDaniel wrote that in 2014. What is a coerced resignation? Well, it's defined as a resignation tendered in the face of certain termination. If you know, or you probably know, or you think you're getting fired, it's a coerced resignation. If Duncan is aware that Huffstetler resigned specifically as an alternative to him being terminated, she is violating FOI law. Douglas, who does know what happened in that meeting, is violating FOIA law. So, one other thing to mention. Duncan said in a group text to the mayor and other city officials, quote, looks like you have it all covered Monday morning. The mayor responded, quote, let's not mention this at update meeting or to anyone until we confirm the correct wording. They didn't want it getting out. If somebody is pursuing other opportunities, that's a lot of secrecy. Only a few select city employees know what's in that personnel file. NEA report has learned of at least 2 other women whom Huffstetler was allegedly engaged in inappropriate behavior with while working on behalf of the city. Huffstetler has denied those claims, by the way. One of the women he said to have been involved with, he met at a leadership Jonesboro class, 2014. We were told that the two, who both graduated the class, engaged in an extramarital affair. Both were married. But the woman was married to somebody that you might not want mad at you. A police officer. He submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for the contents of Huffstetler's city cell phone. A well-placed source told me in law enforcement, quote, "My feeling at the time was that it definitely happened." Before the request was answered, one source confidently stated the phone records were allegedly deleted by Huffstetler in the form of a system reset of his phone. But I've heard that since this story was published from multiple individuals. They've said that. No charges were filed. Carol Duncan, by the way, worked in the city attorney's office at this time, and I'm told handled the Freedom of Information Act request. In fact, I'm told that by City Communication Director Bill Campbell, who said, quote, "I was not here then, but in investigating NEA report's request, this was what the city knew at this time. There was an FOIA by the officer. It did not produce anything improper. Of course not. The records were deleted." It went on to say, quote, "and the accused parties denied an inappropriate relationship." So we submitted an FOIA request to the city for the FOIA request the officer submitted. Guess what? We were told it was destroyed. Huffstetler denied that affair Thursday. This is all from our initial report, and more has happened since then, as we mentioned. We'll tell you about that, what we can, in a moment. But a third female came forward to NEA report and told us how the city parks director, in his capacity as city parks director, made multiple unwanted advances to her in the past, too. She said she was accosted by Huffstetler on several occasions. She said he once asked if he could, quote, "come over for dinner." Other requests included hangouts or other vague activities. She said she denied all of the married man's unwanted advances and were shielding her identity out of concern of reprisal. Quote, "I know he wanted to sleep with me," she said. Since we published this story, we have seen a number of people come forward that we haven't even mentioned to you what they've told us yet. We're still working on that. In fact, yesterday, which was going to be a day off, the only one we got this week, 90 minutes just alone, I talked to a woman who had worked for the city and who detailed a number of abuses. Similar some to what were detailed in this. Others we've not even scratched the surface of yet. And so we're working on that this week on NEA Report. But if you work for the city and you want to talk, we will keep your identity confidential and we will keep your name as an anonymous source. Although we would like somebody that was willing to have their name out there, a brave soul that would put their name out there to represent these allegations. You can contact us. Contact me directly. news@neareport.com is the email address. That goes directly to me. If you send me that, it comes up on my phone. Please keep that in mind. I want to lastly mention in relation to this story that Huffstetler is no stranger to controversy. In 2016, he tweeted, quote, "and they wonder why they are profiled. #idiots." That was in relation to African Americans who were in a photo, I believe, on a bridge over the Mississippi River, protesting. That tweet netted Huffstetler a 2-week suspension, we were told without pay, from the city, until he resumed his director of city parks and city recreational facilities that includes areas where local children, local African American children, play sports. City pool. Joe Mack. Many viewed the punishment as light. Many we talked to, even this week, by the way, and last week. The communications director said he didn't think it was a slap on the wrist. He said a, quote, "neutral outside labor attorney recommended Huffstetler be given a suspension of either 2 weeks or a month." Even with the two recommendations from an outside party in hand, the lighter sentence was chosen. That's a fact just based on what we were told there. And there have been other allegations that we've heard about that involved that specific incident. We're going to be investigating that all week. We're going to be working on that, and as mentioned, you can contact NEA Report without fear of your name getting out. We've already been asked who the anonymous sources are we're talking to, and we've told the city we're not telling you, and we won't. They can sue us, and they will never get anywhere, although they won't, because they know that, because the Supreme Court has ruled that journalists don't have to give up our sources no matter what. But we want to know what's going on. This is about holding government accountable. This is not about protecting the good old boys. He's a good old boy, that guy. We're not doing that here. That's why when all of this came across my desk, it was a very difficult decision for me. On this show, I've interviewed Wixon before. Always been very nice to me. I like him. But I have a duty as a reporter. And if I make the decision when information like this comes to me to not do my duty, then I'm part of the network, the good old boy network. And that's not how Jonesboro is going to work, at least not anymore. This is what we have, and this is our news, and we will continue to report on this case and any others that come to us. And we appreciate the support from the community.